Hello and welcome in to another episode of Rolling with My Special Friends. Today we got another special guy coming to us. He has been coaching college football and changing young men's lives for 4 decades. I don't know how much more special it gets to be able to be around a guy that's had the opportunity to not only to mold some young men's lives, but also now he's been at it so long that a lot of these players that he's coached is coming back with their families and kids, and he's getting to see it come full circle and see them raise their kids and how his effect has had that great impression on all those kids. So I just want to bring him on in and let everybody get to meet Coach Dunn. Coach, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Jim. Thank you.
Quite welcome. Now, as we love to do on this podcast, we just want to jump right straight into this thing. I told everybody about you being a college football coach. What in the world, inspires a guy at a young age? Like, did you just wake up one day in high school and say, I want to coach football?
No, not exactly. It really started a lot earlier than that. My uncle, who was the first and only guy in our family to go to college before, the grandkids and us, he went to the University of Louisville in the early 50s and played football. He weighed 160 pounds and played offensive guard for Frank Camp. And in the middle of his career, he was drafted in the Korean War. So wow. He went to the Korean War as an infantry soldier in the Army, came home and went back and finished his career. So when he had his son, my cousin, who was a couple years older than me, and then I came along, he always had us, playing football in the backyard and carrying on. And he started coaching a little league football team in Louisville, Kentucky. And I think they had like the big team and the little team, the big Bears and the little Bears. We were on the Bears. So that's how I started when I was about 7 or 8 years old. And just loved it. I wasn't very good, and I was really little, believe it or not, until, really college. And he got me interested, and I had some very good high school coaches that kind of, were my heroes and mentors. And I hung out with one of my assistant high school coaches and lifted weights in his garage, and he kind of took me under his wing. And once I got into college, I, wanted to be a coach. And luckily I came out of college and went into high school for 4 years. Then I went to Lees McRae Junior College, lived in the dorm, made $25 a week and room and board. My wife thought I was crazy. And that's how I really got started into college. And from there, I went to Tennessee as a graduate assistant.
Okay. So now, you talked about this uncle and him inspiring you and getting everything going. When did you actually, I know you did, but tell everybody, like, how many years you actually played the sport?
Well, probably from about 8 years old through college. So whatever that is, until I graduated from college, I played center, and I wasn't very good, but I could always long snap. For some reason, that's how I made the travel team as a freshman, and got to playing games because I could long snap and snap on the field goals and punch, which I don't understand nowadays. The centers, they all come out of the game, somebody else comes in and long snaps. It's such a specialty now, but I just took off my arm pads and gave them to the guard, and then I snapped the ball. So
oh, wow.
And my uncle taught me how to do that. And I really never had any training. I could always just long snap. So that's really how I made the team.
Gotcha. So now once that college career was done and you really, you had that inspiration to keep going into it, kind of tell us, the track that led you into college coaching. Like, where did you go first and second and all that kind of stuff?
Okay. I went into high school. My first job was in Jonesboro, Tennessee, at Davy Crockett High School. A couple of my old college buddies, in fact, one of them had the head job, and my old roommate had started coaching there. And I couldn't get a job back in Louisville when I went home because it was really kind of a budget crunch, and they weren't hiring a lot of coaches unless you taught really tough subjects like math or things like that. And I did have a minor in biology, but they still weren't hiring. So I went back down to Tennessee and went to work there for a year. Then I went to Holston High School in Knoxville, Tennessee for 2. Then my old coach got the job at Lees McRae Junior College in Banner Elk, North Carolina. And I went there and lived in the dorm and coached offensive, defensive line for 3 years. And then I was lucky enough, Coach Majors, Johnny Majors from Tennessee, came to speak to our school. It was a Presbyterian-based school, and he came, and we had an assembly every week where we had a guest speaker, a motivational speaker. So he came to Lees McRae to speak, and one of our other coaches picked him up at the airport and said, well, we've got a guy that was down in Knoxville that would love to get into, college coaching, a graduate assistant. So he said, well, have him call me or call this guy, not Coach Major. So I did, and I'll never forget. I'll tell you a funny story. It was Easter Sunday. It was Good Friday. So they had me drive down to Knoxville, and I was going to meet with Coach Majors and some of the other staff and see if, a possible opportunity to get on the field or coach there. So I drive down my little suit. It's Good Friday. They're practicing in the morning so they can get off for Fridays and Easter Sunday. So I go to the gate. They won't let me in because they didn't give them the name. So I'm standing outside the practice field for 2 hours, and they all start running off the field. And finally, I grabbed this guy and said, I'm here to see Coach Major. He said, yeah, like everybody else standing out here. And I said, no, sir, I'm supposed to talk to him. So they finally get me in the locker room. Well, I go in the shower room area. All the coaches are hurrying to get out of there. They all got, things to do, meet their families, whatever. Coach Majors is in the shower. And they tell me to go talk to him. I said, well, he's in the shower. Well, just go to the standing edge. So I got my little suit on. All the steam and water is coming out of the shower. Coach Majors, I can barely see him. He's in there all soaked up. He said, hey, young man, how you doing? I said, fine, sir. I'm here, talked about being a GA or whatever. He goes, so you're ready to be a volunteer? And I said, yes, sir. He said, well, go see this guy, and I'll see you Monday. So I said, okay, thank you, sir. I go upstairs and give me this big playbook. He said, look at it over the weekend, be back here, blah, blah, blah. Well, my wife was driving around outside in her old Nova because she couldn't find a place to park. So I go outside and I flag her down. I get in the car and she goes, how'd it go? I said, I'm a volunteer. And she goes, I know, that's great, a Tennessee volunteer. I said, no, I'm a volunteer. She goes, well, what's it pay? I said, no, I'm a volunteer. She goes, I know, Tennessee volunteers. I said, no, I'm not making a penny. I'm a volunteer. So she almost had a wreck. But anyway, that's a long story. And fortunately, when I got there, they had part-time coaches back then. They still had those. So I did get a little money until I became a GA. So we've always laughed about that. I was talking to Coach Major in the shower. So that's one of my few stories.
Now, so when you went from the volunteer there with Tennessee, where did it lead you after that?
Believe it or not, my first full-time job was Montana State in Bozeman, Montana. I went out there in the fall of '84 and coached D-line. And from there, I went to the University Pacific with Walt Harris, who was on the Tennessee staff. It's all connections, as you know. And that's how, you might be the greatest coach in the world, but it always helps to know somebody who gets you in your foot in the door. So from Pacific, I went to Nevada, Reno with Chris Alt, who's a Hall of Fame coach, great coach. And from there, I went to Ole Miss with Tommy Tuberville, Coach Tuberville. And from there, we came to Auburn, and we were here 10 years, which is the longest place I ever coached. And from there, I went to Texas. Well, I went back to high school at Auburn High here in town for a year, or really a half a year. And then Coach Tubb got the job at Texas Tech. I went out there with him. When he went to Cincinnati, I went to Western Kentucky with Bobby Petrino, who I'd worked with before. And then he left to go to Louisville. I stayed with Jeff Brom, then went to Purdue with Jeff Brom. And that was my last stop. I went up there as a high school relations. And then I retired and moved back to Auburn because we kept our house here because my son graduated from Auburn. He stayed here in the house while we were gone. So a lot of traveling, a lot of schools, enjoyed every one of them. Very fortunate. We loved every place we lived. all a little different, from freezing to death in Montana to California to Ole Miss. But Auburn was probably one of our most favorite, and that's where, like I said, we retired. We're back in Auburn now.
Right. So now, in all those stops, and like you said, all of them were unique in their own way. You have probably, had the opportunity to meet kids from every walk of life, from kids that's got everything handed to them to kids that had little or nothing in your recruiting. How in the world were you able to relate and get these kids, motivated and ready to play in the same huddle?
Well, you're exactly right. I've told my wife and I talked about this. I've been in homes where the kids had a dirt floor, and I've been in mansions, like you said. I think the main thing, you got to be honest. Kids can see through you. I always tried to be myself. Got to know the grandparents, the parents. Always tried to find who the star in their life is. By that I mean, is it their high school coach they listen to? Is it their pastor? Is it their grandfather? Is it the barber, shop guy? Every kid has a what I used to call a star. And I always tried to identify who that was and work with them and get to meet them. A lot of times it was the grandmother or, the grandpa. And just be honest, tell it like it is. Don't promise something that you can't deliver. And they see right through you. But that was a fun part. I enjoyed recruiting. And I've met some kids at school that they were so embarrassed they didn't want me to come to their homes. And that was pretty unique.
Well, now, and even peeling that onion a little bit more to kind of unpack more of that story, do you have, and you don't have to say a name because we don't want to call anybody out, but do you have a story like that you've seen a kid, that's overcome something that came from, because I know you've coached them, that came from that dirt floor and turned into that college star, that NFL star?
Oh, yeah. Without saying names, very famous player. I won't even mention the school I was at. Would not allow me to come to the house, met at the school, finally met his mother at her place of work, which was not a very, prestigious place. Very shy young man. Wanted to go home the first day he was on campus. I had to call mom, got him back, wanted to go home again, called mom, called grandpa, got him back, and I think he played about 9 years in the NFL. And you would know him. He's very famous and a great young man. And yeah, it's just that's what's so rewarding when you have a success story like that of a young man who was so shy and embarrassed, but yet now he's taking care of everybody, or was able to take care of his mom and grandparents.
Right. Well, and that's, and that's what we love to do on our podcast here, is be able to share stories like that. And obviously the main focus today is us showing people in your way of doing and coaching, and be able to coach up that young man, talk him out of something that, hey, I'm sure you've also seen it over the years of kids that did quit and go home and had the opportunity to be something. And I think it's just so inspiring to see coaches be able to get the best out of young men.
Right. Yeah. I guess the biggest disappointment is when a young man gives up and goes home, like you says, or quits. And, instead of just, as if you just hang in there a little longer, just hang on, one step at a time, keep pulling the rope and just finish. But people don't want to finish, and it's easy to give up and not finish. But it's hard to see that light at the end of the tunnel sometimes when you're young. And, back then it was very hard. 2-a-days were really 2-a-days, unlike today.
Right.
And we were hard on kids. I was a tough coach, demanding, and it was a very, very, very hard time, because back then we went 14 straight days, 2-a-days.
Right.
And it was hard and it was hot. And, we didn't have all these 1 day on, 1 day off, which you have to do nowadays. I'm not saying that's wrong, but that was it's so depressing when a young man would give up, especially on full scholarship that came from a poor, situation where that was the only way out. And then they just gave up. I always tried to, not only me, but whoever was with me would try to, call the mom, even get in the car, go see them, try to get them back, give them a second chance. And, which I think everyone deserves. It's easy to be a hard nose and say, okay, if you do this, you're gone. That's not what we're here for. We're here to help people. We all make mistakes. I've made a million of them. And if people wouldn't have forgiven me and helped me, I don't know where I'd be. But I got another funny story. When I was at Lee's McCrae Junior College, I ran the dorms and there was a phone right outside, the old pay phones, which people don't even know what they are nowadays. And we had this little kid from Freeze, Virginia, a real country boy. So I was on him all day, run to the ball, do this, do that. So about 9 o'clock that night, I hear the phone dropping the coins. And he got on the phone. He said, "Hey, Daddy, this is so-and-so. Coach Dunn called me a lot of things today, but tomorrow he can call me long distance. I'm coming home." and his daddy brought him back, brought him into my office. And a big country man from Southwest Virginia, I thought he was going to kill me. He said, "Coach, you do to my son whatever you want. He's not coming home. Thank you." Got up and left. The kid made all conference, went on to a small school and made all American.
Wow.
Just a great story. We're parents. That was a good thing the dad did. But that was a funny story. Call me long distance.
Well, and that's one of the great things as well that I've learned. I know a lot of, obviously, as you know, I know a lot of your former players from Auburn, and being able to watch their stories develop and turn into not only good players, but they've turned into good daddies. I mean, I've seen a lot of good young men out there doing great things, got great jobs, raising great kids, and it's all sprouting from somebody just like yourself of putting that in them, of what you just said, that hard work, and you wouldn't let them quit. And it's amazing to see that transfer into their daily lives every single day, where they won't quit when it's hard at home or it's hard on the job. Like I know that they've learned that from the sports, field that they've been in, and it teaches them everyday life, because at some point football's over for everybody. But for what you're doing, you're changing lives. And I just think that's one of the most amazing things that a coach, puts into a kid.
Yeah, I agree with, I'm so proud, like Spencer Johnson, which I know you know and see. He helped so many of those kids in Houston. I know his son's a good player, but he takes care of so many other kids, and he's not the only one. I'm so proud of those kids, and I watch it on Facebook and follow them and try to respond. That I'm proud of you. And other schools that I've coached at, I've been very fortunate to have good kids, and very successful. A lot of them were back last week for Cadillac's game at home, and I wish I could have seen them. But yeah, that's what it's all about. Our job is to help people. I know that coaches make a lot of money now. I wish I'd have made that kind of money, but that's not the main reason you get into it. I heard Coach Nall talking on here on your podcast a couple of weeks ago, and Coach Yock, same thing. It's about the kids. And if it's not, you could have made a lot of more money doing something else with a lot less, being away from home and travel and, just 9 to 5 or whatever, which is fine. But that's the greatest joy, I think, is watching these kids grow up, then have kids. And some of them have gone into coaching. Some of them play pro ball, but they're giving back to the community and their families, which is so, so neat.
Yeah, I think that's what the amazing part is to see them give back and do what they've been bred into them and coached into them. And now you brought it up, so I'm going to try to let people into that door a little bit. You said a 9 to 5. I want people to know life after college coaching, what you're out there doing now. I mean, I know because I've followed you for a long time that you really love cooking and getting into these contests and doing all these great things out there. So tell people what you're doing after 4 decades of football.
Okay, well, when we were at Ole Miss, Coach Nall, Coach Grand, Coach Price, all of us, none of us, we didn't play golf. Now, Coach Nall liked to fish and hunt, but we didn't have a lot of time. So we would, whenever we had a free moment or a free day, we were all getting together and cooking. We went to Memphis in May, Coach Price and I, and Coach Lutz and all of us. a couple of times because we were so close being in Ole Miss. Well, we continued that on, having a little cook-off here when the coaches, right before two-a-days started at Auburn every year, and it got to be pretty big and fun. Well, now I'm working. My wife thinks I'm crazy. I go to work at 1:30 in the morning, the Country's Barbecue, start up the smoker if it's not already going, load it up with Boston butts, ribs, turkeys, hams, whatever we need for the day, and keep that going. Then I get off about sometimes 5 a.m. On game days, it's longer because of the tailgating, and I love it. I know the hours sound crazy, but it gives me something to do. Like I said, I don't have any hobbies because of coaching. You know, I do like to fish, but I never got to really do much of that. I know you're a big hunter, and I'm terrible at hunting. And so we never played much golf unless we had to in one of those tournaments. And but yeah, that's what I do. I love cooking. We used to have the kids over when it was legal. You could have them over every Thursday night, and Coach Price and I would have them over, and we'd always cook sausage and have ribs and cater stuff for them. But now it's an occasional meal. You can't do that anymore, which I think is ridiculous. And that gave them a chance to see us away from football, hang out with our families, and see another side of coaches other than, every day, the grind of football.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of those kids, were so far away from home. And they enjoyed that, coming over and, watch a little Thursday night football and get something to eat. And they all started bringing their Tupperware. So we had no leftovers when they left.
Well, and that's what you brought that part up as well. They got to peel into your life outside of football. And they actually, for those kids, spending that much time with you, they were family. I mean, I'm assuming you would say it just like I would. Those were like your own sons, that you spent so much time with them that they thought of you as just as much as dad as anybody.
Yeah, no doubt. And, they loved the wives. They were like mamas to them because they would baby them more than I would. But another neat thing is our kids, my son was young. He had all his kids' buddies come over. They're looking at like Spencer Johnson and, all those big guys and DeMarco McNeil and all of them. And them hanging out in the back room playing video games with my son. That was so neat. They were like little kids, but they were relaxing and, like I said, and had a home away from home. And we always told them, hey, you got a problem? Even if I'm not here, you come see my wife. Come see Miss Donna. She'll take care of you, probably better than I will. So, yeah, that was a neat part. I hate they won't let them do that anymore. It's like once every so often now. But every home game we did that. So that was 6 or 7 times a year. They got to come over to my house or Terry's house.
And to throw a little bit into that on the family side of things, do you think this current age of college football, with our NRI deals out there, NIL, the sponsorships, all these things that these kids can get, there doesn't, maybe I'm viewing it wrong, but as a consumer of the product looking from outside, it looks like you're not allowing these kids to be family anymore. They're individuals going out there after the most money they can get. And then when they get over there on a Saturday and playing a football game, they're playing for their self. It's not as much as a team.
Yeah, I hate it. I really miss coaching. I wish I was still coaching, but I don't know if I could coach now. And also the transfer portal. As hard as Coach Nall and I were on those guys, we wouldn't have anybody left. But yeah, I don't like it. I do think they need to be compensated, but I don't think it should be. And I don't understand all of it, but I know it's a lot of money because I see these people advertising that we need money in our program. And I don't see how you can justify one guy getting $1 million and then this other guy getting, 2,000. So I don't really understand it, but it cannot be good for the game. I've always respected the game. I think it's a pure game, and I don't like it, and I don't understand it enough to really say too much. But it cannot be good for morale, and like you say, for the team concept. It's just there's jealousy. People are jealous. It's human nature.
I agree with you 100% because it's, to me, again, as somebody viewing the product, on TV or buying a ticket and going in the stands and watching the game, is you've got a quarterback that makes $1 million off all these sponsorship deals from Country's Barbecue, gives him $1 million to wear their T-shirt, but then you got all them offensive linemen standing in front of him, some of them making nothing. So, I mean, that's kind of some hard feelings there.
Yeah, I agree. It's can't be good. I don't miss that part of coaching.
Well, and it's for the time that you got out of it, it seems like it's made a big transition. But hopefully, Coach Tuberville, I know, is also working in the Senate to try to make some regulations on these things to help some of these coaches and teams, because you want that parity, to me, in football, to be able to have all the teams have a chance to be able to play for those championships, not one or two teams have all the players and the other teams have just whatever they can get. And I also think it returns it back to the way that you guys brought up all the coaching, is where everybody's on an equal playing field. You coach them up and make them the best young men they can be, and then they take those same traits out into life.
For sure. It's just I don't understand it, but hopefully they can, like you said, Coach Tubb and those people in Washington can give us something or some rules. There's got to be some rules, or it's going to be completely out of hand. Like, take when I worked at Western Kentucky, great program, I loved it, but we can't compete with an Auburn or an Alabama. Mm-mm. And even some of the schools in the conference are got better, financial situations than the others. So it can't be fair. So right. I don't know what they're going to do.
All right, so now we're at the portion of our podcast here that we ask every single person that comes on here some questions, and pretty much want to know, if everything was over and the world, the good Lord called you home tomorrow and the world ended for you, if myself or somebody else wrote a book about you and the life of Coach Dunn and those 4 decades of touching kids' lives and meeting all those families and going all those places, what would you hope people read in your book?
Well, good question. I would hope that they would know that I really, really respected the game of football. I think it's a sacred game, that I was fair, demanding, tough on my players, but loved every one of them and wanted them to be successful. Honest, tried to tell the truth, not be something that I wasn't. But I guess just that I was understanding and a fair coach, and expected and demanded the best and wouldn't allow shortcuts, and just that I was a fair, honest coach.
Well, that pretty well sums it up, because I wish a lot of kids that are coming up in this age group right now could read something like that and have mentors, not only coaches, but teachers and other people that are almost what you said to the word, are tough on them, but also honest with them, and tell them, life is not going to always be where you can sit in mom's basement and play video games. Sometimes you're going to have a job and get out there and work.
That's right. There's a difference between being an abusive coach and a tough coach. And I just think you got to be honest with them and fair. They respect that. People want discipline. And I'm not talking about, beating them with a belt and all that. I'm talking about being on time, be accountable. That was a big word I always used, be accountable. Just do what you think's right. Treat others like you want to be treated. And what do you do when no one's watching? Character. To me, that's what it's all about. And like I said, we all make mistakes. I think you forgive and just try to improve and keep coaching. You just got to keep coaching. Just like raising a child. They're going to do some crazy stuff, especially when they become teenagers. So you got something to look forward to. But you can't give up on the youth today. And I think our society, like you said, the video games, social media, it's tough. It's tough to be a child or a teenager with all the suicides and just crazy stuff. And just got to keep grinding and teach them and love them and try to get them to go to, to church or whatever, give them structure. That's what I don't think we have, discipline and structure. like it's so hard to find people to work nowadays because they can't discipline themselves long enough to put in 8 hours a day, which is frustrating. But I'm getting on a pedestal now, so I don't want to start preaching.
No, and it's totally fine. I mean, I understand where you're coming from, and I think it's something that needs to be put out there, that it's, you're losing that, just like you wake up at 1:30 every morning to go to work. That's discipline. That's character. That's all those things you're talking about. Somebody put that in you years ago, and I'm so thankful that guys like you were out there for 4 decades putting it into some of these daddies that are out there now, because they can instill that in their kids. And I, just like on this podcast, we love to interview special people and tell their stories, and I think it's just pretty dang special that you spent 4 decades of your life giving back to other people.
Well, I appreciate that. It means a lot. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. Now, what I want to end with is if there's former players or anybody out there, wanting to reach out to you, how can they get a hold of you? Do you have Facebook, or can they?
I've got Facebook, I've got Twitter, and I got I guess Instagram. I don't know, but okay. Just Facebook, or just come to Countries at 1:30 in the morning. But anyway, seriously, I'm easy to find. I'm still at the same place we lived when we coached here, and love to hear from anybody. Love to help anybody I can. Anybody needs anything or has a problem. I don't have all the answers, but I would appreciate them getting in touch with me.
Well, to me, that's one of the most amazing things about you that I've learned over the years is what you just said. You're out of the game now, and you're still willing to help some of these kids and keep going. It wasn't a job for you when it was over, you were done. You're still helping. So that being said, this is the last thing I got for you. We are fixing to run right up on Thanksgiving holidays here. If you were able to give out the favorite thing to cook, what would you cook for people? What would you cook if you cooked your former players a meal? What is your favorite thing to put on the grill or put in the oven and cook for them?
It's got to be turkey, smoked turkey. I like to brine it for 24 hours, inject it with the Cajun stuff, rub it down with oil and butter, and stuff it with like an onion and celery and seasoning, and smoke it in the smoker.
Well, it can't get any better than that. That's what I've always loved, is smoked turkey or fried turkey. So I think you got a lot of people excited for the holidays. So I want to thank you again for coming on the show and telling us your story, and hopefully we can a year or two or so circle some wagons and come back and get an update on how you're doing.
I would love that, Jim. Thank you, and thank you for what you do. I know you help a lot of people too, buddy, and I'm proud of you.
Well, thank you very much. Everybody out there listening, go like and subscribe our YouTube channel. Check us out on all the major podcast places, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all those great places. Until next time, we'll see you again.